The blood was still wet on the hospital floor when they took my baby from my arms. My husband watched. His mistress smiled. And my best friend of 15 years? She was counting the money they paid her to destroy me. I was 8 months pregnant when I discovered the affair, but that was not the betrayal that shattered me. It was the psychiatric facility they locked me in. The forged documents that said I was insane. The 72 hours I had to prove I was fit to be a mother, while they erased every trace of my existence. They stole my money, they stole my lawyer, they stole my newborn son, and they thought I would stay broken. They were wrong, the lesson. This story will teach you the 7 warning signs of a predatory partner, how to protect yourself before the trap closes, and why the women who survive are never the ones who stayed silent. The meaning. This is not just entertainment. This is a survival guide disguised as a story. Every twist you hear today is based on real legal loopholes that predators exploit. Every piece of advice woven into this narrative could save your life, your children, or someone you love. By the end of this story, you will know exactly how to document abuse, protect your assets, and fight back against a system designed to silence you. I was 8 months pregnant when I discovered my husband's affair. But that was not the betrayal that destroyed me. It was my best friend of 15 years, standing in my hospital room, holding my newborn son, telling the nurses she was his mother. And the worst part? My husband had already signed the paperwork saying I was mentally unfit. I had 72 hours to prove I was not crazy, to prove I was his mother, to prove that everything they had built against me for 18 months was a lie. This is how I lost everything, and this is how I got it all back without a single person saving me but myself. Stay until the end, because the woman who helped me escape had been watching me for 2 years, and her reason will change how you see everyone in your life. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are listening from today. And if this story moves you, that subscribe button is right there. One click, and you will never miss another story like this one. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the house of cards I called my marriage. My name is Elena Marshall. I was 32 years old, 8 months pregnant, and completely blind to the fact that my entire life was about to collapse. Looking back, the red flags were everywhere. But when you are living inside a manipulation, you cannot see the walls closing in. It started small, the way these things always do. Marcus would come home late from work and tell me I was being too emotional when I asked where he had been. He would scroll through his phone with a smile on his face, then accuse me of being paranoid when I asked who he was texting. He would make dinner reservations at restaurants I had never heard of and call me hormonal when I noticed charges on our credit card that did not match his stories. I want to pause here and tell you something important. If someone consistently makes you doubt your own perception of reality, that is not love. That is a strategy. It has a name. It is called gaslighting. And by the time I recognized it for what it was, I had already lost 3 years of my life to a man who never loved me at all. But I am getting ahead of myself. Marcus and I met at a charity gala in downtown Columbus. He was 33 then, a rising star at a pharmaceutical company. With a smile that made my knees weak and a confidence that made me feel safe. I was 29, a forensic accountant with a good career and a bad habit of choosing the wrong men. He was different, I told myself. He was attentive. He remembered the little things. He made me feel like the center of his universe. What I did not know was that Marcus had done his research before that gala. He knew I had just inherited $200,000 from my grandmother. He knew I owned my condo outright. He knew I was lonely and looking for someone to share my life with. I was not his soulmate. I was his target. We got married after 18 months of dating. I sold my condo and we bought a house together in a quiet suburb. Marcus convinced me to add his name to all my accounts. He said it was what married couples do. He said it would make everything easier. Then he convinced me to quit my job. I want you to understand something. I was not a stupid woman. I had a master's degree in accounting. I had spent years tracking financial fraud for corporations. I knew how to spot a con artist, but love makes you blind. And Marcus was very, very good at what he did. He told me he wanted me to focus on starting a family. He said his salary was enough for both of us. He said I deserved to relax after years of working so hard. What he really wanted was to cut me off from my colleagues, to make me dependent on him for everything, to ensure that when the time came to destroy me, I would have no one to turn to. By the time I got pregnant, I had been out of the workforce for 2 years. I had no professional connections left. My closest friend was Rachel Winters, a woman I had known since college, who I trusted with my deepest secrets. I did not know that Marcus was paying her $75,000 to spy on me. Rachel had always been the fun one in our friendship, the spontaneous one, the one who showed up at my door with wine and gossip and made me laugh when I wanted to cry. She had been through a rough divorce the year before, and I thought I was helping her by being a supportive friend. What she was actually doing was documenting my every mood swing, my every moment of pregnancy fatigue, my every frustrated text message. She was building a case file that would eventually be used to declare me mentally unfit. But on that Tuesday morning, in October, I still believed in my marriage. I still trusted my best friend. I was still living in the house of cards, unaware that someone was about to blow it all down. I was making breakfast when I noticed Marcus's phone on the kitchen counter. He had left it behind, which was unusual. He normally guarded that phone like it contained nuclear codes. I should have left it alone. That is what the old Elena would have done. The Elena who trusted her husband. The Elena who believed in privacy. But something made me pick it up. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the growing weight of all those small lies accumulating in my mind. Maybe it was the baby kicking inside me, reminding me that I was about to be responsible for another life. I picked up the phone and typed in his passcode, the one he thought I did not know, the one I had watched him enter 100 times while pretending not to notice. The screen unlocked, and my whole world shattered. The text messages were still on his screen. He had not even bothered to close them. Her name was Victoria. I did not know her last name yet, but I would learn it soon enough. Victoria, with a red heart emoji next to her contact information. Victoria, who had sent my husband a photograph that morning that no wife should ever have to see. I scrolled up through their conversation. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone, but I forced myself to keep reading because I needed to understand the full scope of what I was seeing. It was not just an affair. It was a complete plan to destroy my life. The messages went back 18 months. 18 months of lies. 18 months of secret meetings. 18 months of discussions about how to get rid of me and take everything I had. Victoria had written, "Once the baby comes, we file the paperwork. Patricia is ready." Marcus had responded, "Elena has no idea. She still thinks Rachel is her friend." I felt the room spin around me. Rachel? My Rachel? The woman who had held my hand through morning sickness? The woman who had thrown me a baby shower just 3 weeks ago? I kept scrolling. Victoria. "How much have we paid Rachel so far?" Marcus. $75,000. Worth every penny. She has documented everything we need. Victoria. Perfect. Once Elena is committed, we sell the house and disappear. She will have nothing. Marcus. She deserves nothing. I dropped the phone. For a long moment, I just stood there in my kitchen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The baby kicked again. A reminder that no matter what I was feeling, life was continuing, time was passing. And I needed to make a decision. Here is what the old Elena would have done. She would have confronted Marcus the moment he walked through the door. She would have screamed and cried and demanded answers. She would have shown him the messages and waited for him to explain. But I had spent years as a forensic accountant. I knew how criminals operated. I knew that the moment you reveal what you know, you lose your advantage. So I did something that went against every instinct in my body. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. I wiped my fingerprints off the screen, and I went upstairs to take a shower and think. The hot water pounded against my skin as I replayed everything I had read. They were planning to have me committed. They had a doctor named Patricia who was ready to sign paperwork. They had been building a case against me for over a year. I thought about all those conversations with Rachel, all those times I had complained about Marcus working late, all those moments when I had admitted to feeling overwhelmed by pregnancy. She had been documenting everything, twisting my words, creating evidence that I was unstable. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn the house down. I wanted to make them all pay for what they were doing to me. Instead, I turned off the water, wrapped myself in a towel, and made a plan. I had 48 hours before Marcus would notice anything was different. 48 hours to prepare, to document, to protect myself and my baby. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to fight back. The first thing I did was take screenshots of everything on Marcus's phone. I forwarded copies to a new email address he did not know about. I photographed the messages with my own phone as backup. Then I started digging. My forensic accounting skills had gotten rusty over the past 2 years, but they had not disappeared entirely. I knew how to follow a money trail. I knew how to find assets someone was trying to hide. What I discovered made me sick. Marcus had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Over $300,000 had been transferred to accounts I had never seen. Accounts with Victoria's name on them. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the gambling debt. Marcus owed $340,000 to people you do not want to owe money to. He had been using my inheritance to pay them off while simultaneously transferring assets to Victoria. He was going to leave me with nothing but debt and a psychiatric record that would ensure no one ever believed my side of the story. I found something else, too. A document labeled Emergency Petition. It was a draft of paperwork to have me involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility. The signature line for the attending physician already had a name typed in, Dr. Patricia Hoffman. They were not just planning to leave me. They were planning to lock me up and take my baby. Something cold settled in my chest, not despair, not fear. Something harder. Something that felt like determination. I had 2 days to prepare. I needed to make them count. I started by opening a new bank account at a different bank. I transferred $50,000 from our joint account, money that had been mine before the marriage. It was not theft. It was protecting what was already mine. I packed an emergency bag and hid it in my car. Clothes for me, supplies for the baby, important documents, cash. I called a divorce attorney and scheduled a consultation for Monday morning. I used my new email address and my maiden name, and then I waited. For the next 2 days, I played the perfect wife. I cooked dinner, I rubbed Marcus's shoulders, I told him I loved him and watched him lie through his teeth when he said he loved me too. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Friday evening came. I was folding laundry in our bedroom when I heard the front door open. 2 sets of footsteps. Marcus's voice. and another one I recognized immediately. Rachel. I walked to the top of the stairs and looked down. They were standing in the foyer together, not touching but close. Too close. There was something in Rachel's expression I had never seen before. Triumph. Elena, Rachel said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We need to talk about your mental health, and just like that, my 48 hours ran out. They had prepared for this moment. That much was clear from the way they moved, the way they spoke, the choreographed concern on their faces. Marcus guided me to the living room couch like I was a fragile thing that might break. Rachel sat across from me, a folder in her hands that I recognized immediately. It was thick, too thick, filled with months of manufactured evidence. Baby, Marcus said, and the endearment made my stomach turn. We have been worried about you for a long time. I kept my face neutral. I did not let them see that I already knew everything. What do you mean? I asked. Rachel opened the folder. Inside were photographs of me, dozens of them. Me looking tired after a sleepless night, me crying at a sad commercial, me yelling at a telemarketer who would not stop calling. Normal moments twisted into something sinister. You have been exhibiting concerning behavior, Rachel said. Mood swings, paranoia, erratic emotional responses. I stared at her. This woman who had been my friend for 15 years. This woman who had helped me shop for my wedding dress. This woman who had held me when I cried about my father's death. She looked right back at me without flinching. I found this in your nightstand, Rachel continued. She pulled out a leather journal I had never seen before. Your private journal. Elena, some of the things you wrote in here are very disturbing. I did not write that, I said flatly. I have never seen that journal in my life. Marcus shook his head sadly. Baby, this is exactly what Dr. Hoffman warned us about. The denial. The inability to recognize your own behavior. Who is Dr. Hoffman? I asked, though I already knew. A psychiatrist, Marcus said. We have been consulting with her for weeks. She thinks you might need some time in a facility, just until the baby comes, just until you are stable enough to be a good mother. The words hit me like physical blows, not because they were true, but because they were so perfectly calculated. They knew exactly what would hurt me most, the suggestion that I might not be fit to raise my own child. I took a breath. I had to stay calm. If I reacted emotionally, I would be proving their case. I would like to see this Dr. Hoffman myself, I said, before making any decisions. Marcus and Rachel exchanged a look. Something passed between them that I could not read. Of course, Marcus said smoothly. I already made an appointment for tomorrow morning. We just want what is best for you, Elena. We want you to get the help you need. I nodded, pretending to accept this. But my mind was racing. Tomorrow was Saturday. My consultation with the divorce attorney was not until Monday. I needed to stall. I am feeling very overwhelmed right now, I said, letting my voice tremble slightly. Can I have some time alone to process this? Of course, Rachel said, standing up. She walked over and hugged me, and it took everything I had not to push her away. We love you, Elena. We just want you to be okay. She left. Marcus stayed. I'm going to run out and pick up dinner, he said. Why do not you rest for a bit? I will be back in an hour. I nodded and watched him walk out the door. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I was on my feet. I had 1 hour, maybe less. I grabbed my emergency bag from the car. I found my phone and started recording a video, documenting everything. The journal I had never written in, the folder of twisted photographs, the house I was about to leave behind. Then I headed for the door. I was 3 steps from freedom when it opened. 2 men in white scrubs stood on my porch. Behind them, a white van with the words Riverside Psychiatric Center printed on the side. Mrs. Marshall? One of them said. Your husband called. We are here to help. I backed away. You cannot do this. I have not consented to anything. The second man held up a document. It was the emergency petition I had found on Marcus's computer, but now it was completed, signed by Dr. Patricia Hoffman, and at the bottom, in what looked exactly like my husband's handwriting, was a signature authorizing my involuntary commitment. In the state of Ohio, a spouse can request a 72-hour psychiatric evaluation, the first man said. His voice was not unkind. I am sorry, Mrs. Marshall. We need you to come with us. I want to pause here and tell you something that every woman needs to know. In most states, your spouse can have you committed against your will. They do not need your consent. They just need a doctor willing to sign and enough evidence to make it look legitimate. The system is designed to protect vulnerable people, but it can be weaponized by predators who know how to work it. I learned this lesson in the back of that white van, watching my neighborhood disappear through tinted windows, my hands pressed against my pregnant belly, wondering if I would ever see freedom again. Riverside Psychiatric Center was a squat building surrounded by chain-link fencing. It looked like a prison dressed up as a hospital. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The smell of antiseptic burned my nostrils. They took my phone, they took my bag, they took my clothes and gave me a gray sweatshirt and matching pants. They took everything except the baby still growing inside me. I was placed in a small room with white walls and a bed bolted to the floor. The door had a window that allowed nurses to check on me every 15 minutes, and then I waited. The 72-hour clock had started. In 3 days, an independent psychiatrist would evaluate me and decide whether I should be released or held longer. 3 days to prove I was not crazy while every piece of evidence said otherwise. 3 days that felt like a lifetime. The first night was the worst. I lay on that narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the psychiatric ward around me. Someone crying in a nearby room. Footsteps in the hallway. The constant buzz of fluorescent lights that never turned off. I thought about Marcus, about Rachel, about the 18 months they had spent building this trap. I thought about all the times I had trusted them, confided in them, believed they loved me. And I thought about my baby, the son I had not yet met, the child who was counting on me to be strong enough to fight my way out of this nightmare. The next morning, I met Dr. Patricia Hoffman for the first time. She was not what I expected. Mid-50s, with graying hair and glasses that made her look scholarly. Her voice was soft, almost kind. If I had not known what she was, I might have trusted her. "Elena," she said, settling into a chair across from me. "How are you feeling today?" "I want to call a lawyer," I said. She made a note on her clipboard. "Why do you feel you need a lawyer?" "Because I have been committed against my will based on false evidence." Another note. "Can you tell me more about this false evidence?" I started to explain, keeping my voice calm. The journal I had never written, the photographs taken out of context, the text messages I had discovered on Marcus's phone. Dr. Hoffman listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded sympathetically. "It must be very frightening to feel like people are conspiring against you," she said. "Have you had these kinds of thoughts before? Suspicions that people were not who they claimed to be?" I understood then what she was doing. Every word I said would be twisted to support their narrative. If I claimed Marcus was cheating, she would call it paranoia. If I said Rachel had betrayed me, she would call it delusion. This woman was not here to help me. She was here to bury me. "I need to speak with an independent psychiatrist," I said. "I know my rights." Dr. Hoffman smiled. "Of course. Dr. Collins will be conducting your 72-hour evaluation tomorrow. In the meantime, I would like to start you on a mild sedative, just to help you relax." "I do not consent to medication," I said. Her smile did not waver. "I understand. But given your current state of agitation, I am going to recommend it for your own safety and the safety of your baby." Do not worry. It is perfectly safe during pregnancy. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to show her exactly how not crazy I was by staying perfectly calm while she destroyed my life. Instead, I took the pills they gave me. I let the fog roll over my mind, and I waited. That night, something unexpected happened. I was drifting in and out of sedated sleep when I heard my door open. A nurse I had not seen before stepped inside. She was older, maybe late 50s, with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair, pulled back in a practical bun. Her name tag read, Janet Morrison. "Mrs. Marshall," she whispered, "are you awake?" I nodded, struggling to focus through the medication haze. Janet glanced at the door, then leaned closer. "I have seen this before, Dr. Hoffman. The husbands who bring their wives here. I cannot help you directly. I would lose my job, but I can tell you something that might save your life." I listened. "Tomorrow you will meet Dr. Collins," Janet continued. "She is independent. She is honest. But she has also been fooled before. Do not try to prove you are sane. That makes you look defensive. Instead, ask questions about the evidence against you. Point out specific inconsistencies. Make them prove you are crazy." She straightened up, her expression neutral. "The night nurse is coming. I was never here." Then she was gone. I lay in the darkness, her words echoing in my mind. Do not try to prove you are sane. Make them prove you are crazy. It was the best advice anyone had ever given me. The next morning, I met Dr. Margaret Collins. She was younger than Dr. Hoffman, maybe mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She did not smile when she sat down. She did not offer fake sympathy. She simply opened a folder and said, "Tell me why you think you should not be here." I took a breath and followed Janet's advice. "Dr. Collins," I said, "I have some questions about the evidence in that folder. The journal entries they claim I wrote. Can you tell me the dates on them?" She checked. March 15th through April 20th. I was hospitalized for severe dehydration from morning sickness during that entire period, I said. I could not hold a pen. I could barely lift my head. The hospital has records. Dr. Collins made a note. "Go on." "The text messages about self-harm. What phone number were they sent from?" She checked again and read me the number. "That number was registered 3 months ago," I said. "I have had the same phone number for 12 years. You can verify this with my carrier." Another note. "The photographs showing me disheveled and manic," I continued. "Check the metadata. They were all taken on days I had prenatal appointments. My vital signs were recorded as normal." My doctor noted that I was in good spirits. Dr. Collins was staring at me now, with a different expression. Not suspicion. Something closer to interest. "You seem to have thought about this quite a bit," she said. "I am a forensic accountant," I replied. "Or I was, before I quit my job. I am trained to find inconsistencies in evidence, and Dr. Collins, this evidence is full of them." She closed the folder and looked at me for a long moment. "I am going to recommend a 14-day extended observation," she said finally. "Not because I think you are unstable, but because there are things here that do not add up, and I want time to investigate." My heart sank. 14 more days in this place. But then Dr. Collins said something that gave me hope. "I am also going to request that Dr. Hoffman be removed from your case. I have concerns about her objectivity." It was not freedom, but it was a crack in the wall they had built around me. I would take it. The next 36 hours brought 3 pieces of news, each one more devastating than the last. The first came during my only supervised phone call. I had memorized the number from my bank, the one where I had hidden $50,000. My safety net, my escape plan. "I am sorry, Mrs. Marshall," the bank representative said. "That account was closed yesterday. The funds were transferred to your joint account per your husband's request." "That is impossible," I said. "He does not have access to that account." "He presented a power of attorney," she replied. "Signed by you. Everything was in order. I never signed a power of attorney, I said, my voice rising. The nurse supervising my call reached for the phone. I think that is enough for today. The line went dead. $50,000. Gone. Every penny of protection I had built for myself, stolen by a forged signature. The second blow came 2 hours later when I finally reached the divorce attorney's office. Mrs. Marshall, the receptionist said, and something in her voice made my blood run cold. Your husband came to see us yesterday. He explained your situation and formally withdrew your consultation request. I never withdrew anything, I said. I understand. But he also informed us that he is retaining our firm for the divorce proceedings. Due to conflict of interest, we can no longer represent you. He cannot do that, I said. I contacted you first. I'm very sorry, she said. She did not sound sorry. She sounded uncomfortable, like someone who knew something was wrong, but was not going to do anything about it. Good luck, Mrs. Marshall. Marcus had stolen my lawyer, the same way he had stolen my money, the same way he was trying to steal my baby. The third catastrophe came at hour 52 of my psychiatric hold. I had been having cramps all morning, but I told myself it was stress, told myself the baby was fine, told myself I just needed to hold on a little longer. Then my water broke. I was 3 weeks early. The baby was coming whether I was ready or not. They rushed me to Columbus General Hospital, a real hospital, not the psychiatric facility. Nurses surrounded me. Monitors beeped. Doctors shouted instructions I could not understand through the haze of pain and fear. And then Marcus was there. He appeared at my bedside in a shirt and tie, his face arranged in an expression of concerned husband. He held my hand while I screamed through contractions. He wiped sweat from my forehead. He whispered that everything was going to be okay. I wanted to spit in his face, but I was too busy trying to bring our son into the world. The delivery was complicated. The baby was small, stressed from everything my body had been through. There was a moment when his heartbeat dropped, and the doctors exchanged looks that made me certain I was going to lose him, but then I heard it. A thin, wavering cry. The most beautiful sound I had ever heard in my life. My son, alive, here. They placed him on my chest. He was so small, barely 5 pounds, with a scrunched red face and tiny fingers that curled around my thumb. I looked down at him and felt something crack open inside me, a love so fierce it hurt. I held him for 11 minutes, 11 minutes of pure, perfect joy. Then the social worker arrived. She was a thin woman with a clipboard and an apologetic expression. Behind her stood 2 security guards and a woman I did not recognize. Mrs. Marshall, the social worker said, given your current psychiatric status and the documented concerns about your mental stability, we are placing temporary custody of the infant with the father until your evaluation is complete. No, I said. No, you cannot take him. The woman I did not recognize stepped forward. She had dark hair and red lipstick and eyes that glittered with triumph. Do not worry, Elena, she said. I will take good care of him. Victoria. This was Victoria Reynolds, the woman from the text messages, the woman who had orchestrated my destruction. Standing in my hospital room, reaching for my son. I screamed. I tried to hold on. But they pried his tiny body from my arms while Marcus watched with an expression of sad concern that made me want to kill him. I fought. I kicked. I screamed until my throat was raw. They sedated me. When I woke up, I was back at Riverside Psychiatric Center. My arms were empty. My room was silent. And somewhere across the city, my newborn son was being raised by the people who had stolen everything from me. I want to pause here and tell you something. If you have ever been in that place, that moment when everything you love has been taken and there seems to be no way forward, I need you to hear me. Giving up feels like relief, but it is a trap. The moment you stop fighting is the moment they have won forever. I did not give up that night, but I came close, closer than I have ever admitted to anyone. What saved me was anger, a cold, hard rage that settled in my chest like a stone. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would sign whatever they wanted, accept whatever scraps they offered, disappear quietly while they lived my life. They were wrong. I was not broken. I was just getting started. Day 4 of my extended observation. I had stopped eating, stopped speaking, stopped doing anything except lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, planning. The nurses were worried. They made notes about my deterioration. They increased their checks from every 15 minutes to every 10. They did not understand that I was not falling apart. I was putting myself back together, piece by piece, into something harder, something sharper, something that would not break. That evening, a new patient arrived. I noticed her in the common room during dinner, a meal I was not eating. She was in her mid-40s, with short brown hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She did not look scared, like most new patients. She looked purposeful. She sat down across from me without asking permission. "You are not eating," she observed. I did not respond. "My name is Caroline," she said. "Carolyn Webb. I am here for an anxiety evaluation, but between you and me, my anxiety is perfectly under control." Something in her tone made me look up. "You are Elena Marshall," she continued quietly. "Your husband had you committed 4 days ago. You just gave birth to a son who was taken from you, and you are currently plotting revenge against everyone who put you here." My spine straightened. "Who are you?" Caroline glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Then she leaned forward and said something that changed everything. "Your husband's girlfriend, Victoria. She owns a PR firm that specializes in reputation management. She is very effective at making people look crazy." I stared at her. "How do you know that?" "Because she did it to my client's wife 3 years ago," Caroline said. "Same psychiatrist, same facility, same forged documents. I have been tracking Victoria Reynolds for 2 years, waiting for her next victim." I felt the fog in my mind start to clear. "You are not really a patient. I am a private investigator." Caroline's voice was barely above a whisper. "Victoria destroyed my client's family. He lost his wife to this place, lost custody of his kids, lost everything. He hired me to make sure she never does it to anyone else. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need your help." She paused. "And you need mine." Caroline explained what she had learned over 2 years of surveillance. Victoria Reynolds was not just a homewrecker. She was a professional predator. She targeted married men with assets. She seduced them, manipulated them, convinced them their wives were the problem. Then she helped them commit their wives to psychiatric facilities using Dr. Patricia Hoffman, her college roommate. Once the wives were out of the picture, Victoria drained the marital assets and moved on to her next target. She had done it at least 4 times that Caroline could confirm. Sandra Blake, in 2018, lost custody of her twins. Meredith Cole, in 2020, convicted of fraud based on fabricated evidence. Amanda Taylor, in 2021, her husband disappeared with their children to another state. And now me. "Here is what I know," Caroline said. "Victoria made a mistake with you. She does not know that your background is in forensic accounting. She does not know that you can trace money trails. And she does not know that I found you before she could finish destroying you. What do you want from me? Help me take her down." Caroline's eyes were intense. "Not just for you, for Sandra, for Meredith, for Amanda, for every woman she is going to do this to next." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds to remember my son's face in those 11 minutes I held him. 3 seconds to picture Victoria reaching for him with her manicured hands. 3 seconds to decide that I would burn down everything she had built, even if I had to burn myself down with it. "How do we start?" I asked. Caroline smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally found a partner. "First, we get you out of here. Then we make them pay." Day 7 of my hold. Dr. Margaret Collins was due for her follow-up evaluation, the one that would determine whether I was released or held for another 30 days. Caroline had spent 3 days coaching me. We met during meals, in the common room, during the brief periods when patients were allowed to mingle. She fed me information in fragments, always watching for nurses who might be listening. I learned that Dr. Hoffman and Victoria had been roommates at Ohio State. I learned that Riverside Psychiatric Center had an unusually high rate of extended commitments for married women. I learned that 3 of Victoria's previous victims had been evaluated in this exact facility by this exact doctor. And I learned exactly what questions to ask to make Dr. Collins legally obligated to investigate. The evaluation took place in a small conference room with institutional chairs and a window that looked out on the parking lot. Dr. Collins sat across from me with her folder of evidence. Her expression was neutral but watchful. "How are you feeling today, Elena?" she asked. "Better," I said. "More focused. I have had time to think about my situation." "And what conclusions have you reached?" I took a breath. Here was the moment that would determine everything. "Dr. Collins, I need to report a concern about my attending physician. I believe Dr. Patricia Hoffman has a personal relationship with a woman named Victoria Reynolds. Victoria is currently in a romantic relationship with my husband. I request that you verify whether Dr. Hoffman disclosed this conflict of interest." Dr. Collins' pen stopped moving. Her eyebrows rose. "That is a serious allegation," she said. "I can provide specific evidence." I continued. "Victoria Reynolds owns a PR firm called Reynolds Reputation Management. Her website lists her college education at Ohio State University, class of 1994. Dr. Hoffman's medical license, which is public record, shows she also graduated from Ohio State in 1994. Dr. Collins made a note. "Go on. I also request that you investigate whether there is a pattern of similar cases at this facility. Married women committed at their husband's request, evaluated by Dr. Hoffman, who are subsequently divorced and lose custody of their children. I believe if you check the records, you will find at least 3 cases that match this pattern in the past 5 years." The room was very quiet. "You seem remarkably well prepared for this conversation," Dr. Collins said slowly. "I was a forensic accountant for 8 years," I replied. "I am trained to find patterns. And Dr. Collins, the pattern here is not mental illness. The pattern is fraud." She closed her folder and looked at me for a long moment. "I am going to make some calls," she said finally. "In the meantime, you will remain here, but I am removing you from Dr. Hoffman's direct care pending my investigation." It was not freedom, not yet, but it was progress. 48 hours later, everything changed. The investigation revealed exactly what I had predicted. Dr. Hoffman had failed to disclose her relationship with Victoria Reynolds. Hospital records showed 4 cases with suspicious similarities to mine. The state medical board had been notified. I was released from Riverside Psychiatric Center on day 9 of what was supposed to be a 14-day hold. Caroline was waiting in the parking lot with a rental car and a folder full of documents. "We have work to do," she said. "Your custody hearing is in 3 days." I climbed into the car and felt sunlight on my face for the first time in over a week. It felt like being born again. The Franklin County Family Courthouse was an imposing building of gray stone and narrow windows. I walked through the security checkpoint with Caroline beside me, carrying a folder that contained everything we had gathered. I could not afford an attorney. My money was gone, my lawyer had been stolen, and the legal aid offices were backed up for months. So I was representing myself. It was terrifying, but I had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing. I knew family law better than most people who had attended law school. I had practiced my arguments until I could deliver them in my sleep. I was ready. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with a lawyer who probably cost $500 an hour. Victoria was in the gallery, dressed in a conservative navy dress, trying to look respectable. Rachel was there too. My former best friend, she would not meet my eyes. The judge was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and reading glasses. Judge Catherine Sullivan. I had researched her too. She was known for being fair, for listening to evidence, for not automatically siding with whoever had more money. I was counting on that reputation. The hearing began with Marcus's lawyer presenting his case. He painted a picture of a mentally unstable woman who had suffered a breakdown during pregnancy. He described my involuntary commitment as a necessary intervention. He suggested, with regret, that I was not fit to care for my own child. Then it was my turn. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I would like to present evidence that my psychiatric commitment was fraudulent, that it was part of a coordinated scheme by my husband and his girlfriend to steal my child and my assets. Marcus's lawyer objected. The judge overruled him. I presented the phone records showing the threatening texts came from a device I did not own. I presented the hospital records, proving I could not have written the journal entries during my hospitalization for morning sickness. I presented bank statements showing $75,000 in payments from Victoria Reynolds to Rachel Winters over 18 months. I presented Caroline's documentation of Victoria's previous victims. The judge's expression grew more serious with each piece of evidence. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His lawyer's confident smile faded. Victoria's face went pale. When I finished, the judge called a 30-minute recess to review the evidence. I sat in the hallway with Caroline, my hands trembling. You did well, she said quietly. I allowed myself a tiny spark of hope. The judge had listened. She had seen the pattern. She believed me. For the first time in weeks, I thought I might actually win. Then the doors opened, and 2 sheriff's deputies walked toward me. Elena Marshall, one of them said, you are under arrest. The world tilted. What? There is an outstanding warrant for your arrest. Fraud charges filed this morning by your husband. You are accused of embezzling $50,000 from your joint accounts. No, I whispered. No, this is not happening. They handcuffed me in the courthouse hallway, in front of Marcus, who looked appropriately devastated, in front of Victoria, whose pale face had regained its smile, in front of Rachel, who finally met my eyes with something that might have been guilt. The custody hearing was postponed indefinitely, pending resolution of criminal charges. I spent that night in Franklin County Jail, curled on a thin mattress, thinking about my son. He was 4 weeks old. He had never spent a single night with his mother. He did not even know my face, and now I was a criminal, an accused felon, a woman who might spend years in prison for trying to protect her own money. Marcus had anticipated my counterattack. The moment I filed my motion, he had filed charges. He had used my own evidence against me. He had found a way to destroy me, even when I thought I had won. I lay in that cell and understood something terrible. This was not just a custody battle. This was war. And so far, I was losing. The visitor's room at Franklin County Jail was a depressing space of plastic chairs and plexiglass dividers. I had been there for 2 days, waiting for an arraignment that kept getting postponed. I was not expecting visitors. Caroline could not afford to be associated with a criminal defendant. I had no family. My only friend had betrayed me. So when the guard told me someone was there to see me, I assumed it was a mistake. The woman waiting on the other side of the plexiglass was a stranger, early 50s, with silver-streaked hair and a face that looked like it had seen too much and kept going anyway. "Elena Marshall," she said. "My name is Diane Mercer. I am an attorney." "I cannot afford an attorney," I said. "I know. That is why I am here pro bono." She slid a business card through the slot in the divider. "I run a non-profit called Second Chance Sisters. We represent women who have been destroyed by predatory partners." I stared at the card. "How did you find me?" "Carolyn called me," Diane said. "I have been waiting for someone like you for 3 years." She told me her story. 3 years ago, a woman named Sandra Blake had come to her after being committed to Riverside Psychiatric Center. Sandra had lost custody of her twins. She had been convicted of assault based on fabricated evidence. By the time Diane found her, she was broken beyond repair. Sandra had mentioned a woman named Victoria, a woman who had seduced her husband, a woman who had destroyed her life. Diane had started investigating. She had found Meredith Cole, Amanda Taylor, other women with similar stories. A pattern of destruction that pointed to a single source. But she had never been able to prove it. The evidence was always too scattered. The victims were always too damaged to fight back. Then came Elena Marshall. "You are different," Diane said. "You are a forensic accountant. You can trace the money. You can document the fraud. And most importantly, you escape the psychiatric hold with your credibility intact." I felt something stir in my chest, something that had gone dormant during my nights in jail. "Hope, what do you want me to do?" I asked. "First, we get these charges dropped," Diane said. "The fraud case is weak. Marcus forged a power of attorney to close your account. The signature analysis will prove it. He made a mistake in his rush to destroy you. And then we go on the offensive. 4 women are ready to testify against Victoria Reynolds. 4 women who lost everything because no one believed them. If you are willing to lead the charge, we can take her down." I thought about Sandra, Meredith, Amanda, women I had never met, women whose lives had been destroyed by the same predator who was trying to destroy mine. I thought about my son, 4 weeks old, being raised by a monster. And I thought about something else. Something that had been crystallizing in my mind through all the dark nights and desperate hours. I was not just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman who had been gaslit, manipulated, committed, and discarded. Every woman who had been told she was crazy when she was actually seeing the truth. Every woman who had lost everything because the system was designed to protect predators. Abusers depend on isolation. The moment you find other people who have experienced the same thing, their power starts to crumble. I looked at Diane through the plexiglass. "When do we start?" I asked. 3 weeks later, I walked into the Franklin County Family Courthouse for the second time. Everything was different now. The fraud charges had been dropped. Forensic analysis proved that the signature on the power of attorney was Marcus's own handwriting, not a convincing forgery. He had gotten sloppy in his desperation. His own evidence had condemned him. I was no longer alone. Diane walked beside me, along with 2 other attorneys from Second Chance Sisters. Behind us came Sandra Blake, Meredith Cole, and Amanda Taylor. 3 women who had been broken by Victoria Reynolds, 3 women who had put themselves back together and come to bear witness. Caroline was there too, the private investigator who had found me in my darkest moment, who had given me the tools to fight back instead of trying to save me herself, and Janet Morrison, the night nurse from Riverside, who had whispered the advice that changed everything. She had been fired when the investigation started, but she did not seem to mind. She told me later that some things were worth losing a job over. The courtroom was packed. Word had spread about the case. Reporters filled the gallery. Women from domestic violence organizations sat in silent support. This was not just a custody hearing anymore. This was a reckoning. Marcus looked smaller than I remembered. The confidence was gone. The charm was gone. He sat at his table with his expensive lawyer and stared at the army of women who had come to end his lies. Victoria was not there. She had been arrested 2 days earlier on federal fraud charges. The evidence we had gathered led investigators to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, accounts that connected to a network of predatory women who had been targeting wealthy men for over a decade. She was facing 20 years in federal prison. She would not be hurting anyone else for a very long time. The hearing lasted 4 hours. I presented everything: the text messages, the financial records, the pattern of victims, the forged documents, the psychiatric conspiracy. Every piece of evidence I had gathered, organized by my forensic accountant's mind into an irrefutable case. Sandra testified about losing her twins. Meredith testified about being convicted of crimes she did not commit. Amanda testified about watching her children disappear, and then Marcus broke. I watched it happen. The moment when he realized Victoria was not coming to save him. The moment when he understood that he had been used just like the rest of us. The moment when everything he had built came crashing down. He confessed. To the psychiatric scheme. To the forged documents. To working with Victoria to steal my assets and my child. He wept on the stand like the weak, pathetic man he had always been beneath the charm. I did not feel satisfaction. I did not feel triumph. I just felt tired. The judge's ruling was swift and absolute. Full custody to Elena Marshall. Marcus Marshall ordered to pay restitution and child support. Criminal referrals for Marcus Marshall, Rachel Winters, and Dr. Patricia Hoffman, and a formal apology entered into the record, acknowledging that the family court system had failed to protect a vulnerable woman and her child. After the ruling, I walked out of the courthouse into bright autumn sunlight. Caroline was waiting by her car. In the back seat, strapped into a brand new car seat, was my son. He was 6 weeks old. I had missed most of his life. I had missed his first smile, his first sound, his first recognition of another human face. But I had not missed everything, and I would not miss anything else. I lifted him out of the car seat and held him against my chest. He was heavier than I remembered, warmer, more real. "Hi, baby," I whispered. "I am your mommy. I am so sorry it took me so long to get to you." He looked up at me with unfocused eyes and made a small sound. It was not forgiveness. He was too young for that, but it was a start. People asked me if it was worth it. The pain, the terror, the weeks in a psychiatric facility and a jail cell, the desperate fight to prove I was not crazy when everyone said I was. I never know how to answer that question. It was not worth it. Nothing is worth having your child taken from your arms. Nothing is worth the nightmares I still have about white walls and fluorescent lights. Nothing is worth the trust I lost and will never fully regain. But I survived it. And in surviving, I became someone new. I am not the woman I was before. That woman needed other people's approval. That woman trusted without verification. That woman put her faith in her husband's love and her best friend's loyalty. This woman trusts evidence. This woman documents everything. This woman knows that the people who claim to love you can be the same people who destroy you. And this woman fights back. Today I work as a forensic consultant for Diane's nonprofit. I help other women trace hidden assets and document financial abuse. I teach them what I learned the hard way about protecting themselves before the trap closes. My son is almost 7 months old now. He laughs when I tickle his feet. He reaches for my face when I pick him up in the morning. He has no idea what I went through to keep him. I hope he never has to know. I hope his life is simple and safe and free from the monsters I had to fight. But if it is not, I will teach him what I know. I will show him how to find patterns in lies. I will explain why documentation matters. I will make sure he understands that trusting someone does not mean being blind to who they really are. As for the others, here's where they ended up. Victoria Reynolds is serving 12 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy, and running an unlicensed legal practice. She will be 60 when she gets out. Her network has been dismantled. Her victims have been compensated, at least partially, from the assets she accumulated through her crimes. Marcus Marshall took a plea deal, 3 years suspended sentence in exchange for his testimony against Victoria. He lost his job, he lost his reputation, he lives with his mother now, and works at his cousin's car dealership. I heard his Google reviews are terrible. I'm not saying I check them regularly, but the one about him crying when a customer asked for a discount did make me smile. Rachel Winters served 18 months in federal prison. She sent me a letter when she got out, asking for forgiveness. I did not respond. Some betrayals cannot be forgiven. They can only be survived. Dr. Patricia Hoffman lost her medical license. She is facing multiple civil suits from her victims. She will spend the rest of her career paying for the lives she helped destroy. And me? I am okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still flinch when someone tells me I am being emotional. I still find it hard to trust anyone with my heart. But I am alive. I am free. I have my son, and I have something else too. A network of women who understand what I went through because they went through it themselves. The sisterhood, the survivors, the ones who refuse to stay broken. We find each other now. In support groups and online forums and quiet conversations at the back of courtrooms. We share information and resources and strength. We watch out for the patterns that predators use, and we warn each other before the traps can close. Because here's what I learned in those dark weeks when everything was taken from me. Abusers depend on isolation. They need you to believe you are alone. They need you to think no one will understand. They need you to stay quiet and compliant and ashamed. But you are not alone. None of us are alone, not anymore. If you are listening to this story and you recognize something in it, if you are living with someone who makes you doubt your own reality, if you suspect that the people who claim to love you might be planning something terrible, I need you to hear me. Trust your instincts, but verify with evidence. Document everything before you confront. Open accounts your partner does not know about. Find other people who have experienced what you are experiencing. Do not try to prove you are sane. Make them prove you are crazy. The legal system is slow and imperfect, but it responds to evidence. And most importantly, you are stronger than you think. You have survived everything that has happened to you so far. You can survive this too. I know because I survived it, and so can you. One more thing before I go. 3 months after I got my son back, my phone rang. Unknown number, FBI Financial Crimes Unit. The agent's name was Detective Richardson. He had been following the Victoria Reynolds case. He wanted to know how I had identified the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, because those accounts connected to cases they had been building for 5 years, cases involving much bigger targets than Victoria. They offered me a consulting position. I took it. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I have helped take down 17 predators. I have recovered over $40 million for victims. I have testified in 4 federal trials. My son calls me Mama now. He does not know that his mother spends her days hunting monsters. He just knows that I am always there when he needs me, and that I will never ever let anyone take him from me again. But that is another story. Maybe I will tell it someday. For now, I want you to remember one thing. The woman who told you this story was once exactly where you might be right now. Scared, alone, convinced that no one would believe her. She got out. She fought back. She won. And so can you. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment telling me where you are listening from. Because you are not alone. None of us are alone. Not anymore. This has been Pregnant and Betrayed. Thank you for listening until the end. Stay strong out there. And remember, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Goodbye for now. If you are ready to hear how one woman turned her darkest nightmare into her greatest weapon, stay with me until the very end. The final twist will change how you see everyone in your life. Before we begin, drop a comment telling me where you are listening from today. I read every single one, and your stories remind me why I tell these. And if this channel has ever helped you feel less alone, that subscribe button is your way of saying thank you. One click. That is all it takes to join a community of survivors who refuse to stay silent. Now, let us begin. Closing disclaimer. Thank you for staying until the end. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and genuine value to your life. Every story we create is crafted with intention, designed not just to entertain, but to inform, empower, and protect. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know whose life you might save. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and never stop fighting for yourself. Goodbye for now.